What's up? My name is Mike. Today I want to talk about the book Show Your Work by Austin Kleon. You might want to Google that. But this is a book that I read recently, and I actually found out about the book through another YouTube channel called Ali Abdal. Link in the description. But anyway, he was talking about this book called Show Your Work and kind of talking about the key points that were covered in the book. And I want to share with you the key takeaways that I got out of it. Because I think a lot of people, they just kind of go through the chapters and they just like summarize the chapters. I don't really think that's very helpful. So what I want to do instead is just talk about how I'm going to apply what I actually learned in the book to what I'm doing right now. Hopefully that'll be a little bit more helpful to you. So for a little bit of background, the entire book is, as you might expect, about showing your work, the importance of showing your work and the benefit of showing your work. So if you're like a blogger, or if you're a musician, if you're like a developer, like a game developer or a coder, it's like the way that you can build your following, the way that you can become part of the community is to literally share the work that you're doing with other people. Along that line, it's saying you don't have to be a genius to get started with this. There's 7-8 billion people in the world. And if you think about the fact that being 20% better at something than somebody else makes you look like an expert, right? Think about all the people in the world who are 20% worse at what you're doing right now. They will be able to benefit substantially more from learning from you than learning from somebody else on the internet, because you're just 20% away from them, right? They'll be able to relate and understand the difficulties that you're going through, whereas somebody who's on the other side may not be able to relate or really understand the language being used. So seeing someone who's going through it is much more motivational. Seeing someone who's going through it is much more inspirational and much more relatable to someone who's also trying to go down that path. So you can be that person. Another thing is we tend to connect with people that are like we are. I think that most of my viewers are Belizeans. And I think a lot of that is because I'm Belizean American. I have Belizean upbringing, I have Belizean roots. I look like a Belizean, you know what I mean? So even if there's other people who have done the things that you are doing, you might be the only person that's like you who's doing the thing that you're doing. And that might be the one thing that it takes for somebody else to really connect with you. So keep that in mind, right? As long as you're presenting yourself as yourself. Like, I talk about all the bad things that I've gone through because someone out there has gone through the exact same things that I have, and they can connect with that. Some people don't want to hear it. Some people might be able to latch onto that, and that might be what it takes for them to understand that, like, hey, he's been where I've been, he's doing it, I can probably do it too. Sometimes it's all it takes for them to take action. So, kind of a long-winded way to just say that no matter where you are, all you have to do is pick something that you want to learn, or pick something that you do currently, and then just start doing that publicly. The second point, the second chapter of the book is called Think Process, Not Product. And basically what this is saying is that if you're an artist, don't focus on the final art piece. Focus on the paintbrushes that you use, the paint that you use. Think about the people who inspire you, right? Like, I think very often creative people just straight up steal from one another, you know, and that's completely fine. But I'm saying that if you're taking inspiration from a certain artist, then credit that artist. Show where your inspiration came from. I think a lot of us kind of get prideful in our way of thinking, and we tend to think that, like, oh, everything that I'm doing is my own, or every thought that I have is my own. I made an entire video about how your thoughts aren't your own thoughts, right? Every thought that you have, every opinion that you have, is really just reflected from other people's thoughts and emotions and opinions, right? So don't for a second think that you have all the answers. Everything that you know about the world came from somebody else's perspective. So share where that perspective came from. The third chapter is share something small every day. This one, this chapter, I honestly kind of skimmed through it. I didn't get much value out of it, to be perfectly honest. But essentially what it's saying is that if you have like a social media platform, then just share your thoughts every day. You know, let's say you're walking around and you see a tree that looks really nice. Take a photo of the tree, post it on your social media, and there'll be people who also love trees and they'll connect with that. So I mean, that one, it's whatever. I didn't really care too much for that chapter. Chapter 4 is to open up your cabinet of curiosities. And this is similar to chapter 3, where it's saying, talk about the things that you desire. Talk about the things that you are really passionate about, and you will naturally attract people who share in those passions and people who share in those thoughts and opinions. So same thing, didn't get much out of that one. Chapter 5 is called Tell Good Stories. And this one is extremely important. I've read entire books about storytelling, the importance of storytelling, the importance of influencing people, right? And we hear the word influence, and I think a lot of us kind of recoil at that, but it's very important to be influential. Because if you think about it, how many gurus have you seen that are just blatantly spouting false information? If you really believe in what you're doing, if you really believe in the process, and if you really enjoy it, you want people to understand where you're coming from. And if you're not able to influence people into seeing the benefit of what you're doing, then they're going to instead follow the people who don't really believe or indulge in what they're doing, but are just using that as a way to get money from their followers. So if you're apprehensive about this idea of like influencing other people, what if you had a son or a daughter? Would you rather have them listen to what you have to say about a certain matter, or would you want them opening up TikTok and taking TikTok advice? Right? All of a sudden this becomes important. So yeah, telling good stories is extremely important. Chapter 6 is about teaching what you know, right? So we've already talked about documenting the process and sharing what you're learning, but it's also important to take a step back and teach what you already know. I haven't taught anything about fitness or nutrition, and that's something that I spent over a year just really dialing in and really trying to understand, and I had to learn the hard way about what did and didn't work and what was and wasn't true. So those are things that I know about, that I've learned about, that I could be sharing with you right now. Chapter 7 just says don't turn into human spam. This one's kind of a gimme. Again, I skimmed through this one, but it's really just saying like, if you're going to be a part of a community, don't just try to speak louder than everybody else. Learn to contribute to the community as well, right? If you're part of a forum, answer people's questions, right? Don't just post your own content. Go appreciate other people's content. Go connect with them and learn from them, right? Be a person. Receive as much as you give. That one's pretty simple. Chapter 8 is called Learn to Take a Punch. This one is kind of tough, and this is something that I've run into myself. My YouTube channel is completely public. Anybody who wants to find me can find me. So if you don't agree with something that I'm saying, you can very easily reach out to me and tell me that. And whether or not I agree with what that person is saying, I'm gonna have to deal with the consequences of the fact that I'm sharing my opinions publicly. So if you're gonna share your work, you have to be prepared to take a punch or two. Chapter 9 is selling out. And this one was interesting, and I think it's important because as creatives, I think a lot of us do it because we love it, but at the same time, money is important, right? We all need money to survive. And to cast aside the idea of making money for the sake of following your passion, it's dishonest. When you're struggling to pay the bills, when you're struggling to feed yourself, you know, taking a brand deal, taking a sponsorship, it's gonna be a lot more attractive. So learning how and when to sell out is kind of covered in chapter 9, and then chapter 10 is just stick around. You know, after you've done this process, sharing your work, and you've kind of become a professional or like a master at what you've done, stick around the community. You know, this is something that you love, right? This is something you're passionate about. So don't just throw it off to the wayside once you've reached your goals. You know, you can still stick around and help other people reaching theirs. So that's just a quick summary of this book. It's called Show Your Work, 10 Ways to Share Your Creativity and Get Discovered by Austin Kleon. Pretty interesting book. I'm gonna leave a link to the book in the description. I'm gonna leave a link to Ali Abdal's channel because again, that's where I first heard about it. But let me know what you think about this. I thought it was really interesting. If you're a creative and you're kind of struggling to get noticed and you want to build a following, then I suggest you pick this book up, or at least just start implementing some of the things that I talked about. With all that being said, I'm on my own self-improvement journey. If you want to follow along with that and learn what I learn along the way, feel free to subscribe. But that's all I really got for you today, and until next time.